Good evening. I'm Nima Rajan, and this is Forum Daily for Friday, June 24th. And tonight, we begin with a controversial and historic move by the U.S. Supreme Court's conservative majority. It has ended constitutional protections for abortion that had been in place since 1973. The court has overturned Roe v. Wade in a decision that was unthinkable before former U.S. President Donald Trump appointed 3 justices to the bench. The ruling is expected to lead to abortion bans in about half of U.S. states. The Biden administration and other defenders of abortion rights have warned that a decision overturning Roe v. Wade would also threaten other high court decisions in favor of gay rights and even potentially contraception. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the U.S. Supreme Court's decision today is horrific. Mr. Trudeau tweeted that his heart goes out to American women who will now lose their legal right to an abortion. He says no government, politician, or man should tell a woman what she can and cannot do with her body. The Conservative Party's interim leader, Candice Bergen, says its position on abortion hasn't changed, and it will not introduce legislation or reopen the abortion debate. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is reacting with outrage. He said in a statement that anti-abortion policies are dangerous and must not be allowed to take root in Canada. Well, as temperatures rise on the West Coast, British Columbia looks back at the heat dome that impacted hundreds in the province last year. It was a year ago today that temperatures in the province began to rise to dangerous levels. More than 600 people succumbed to heat-related illnesses. The strong ridge of high pressure trapped stagnant air like a lid over the province amid drought-like conditions. Environment Canada issued special weather statements for most of the province earlier this week. This comes as temperatures are expected to rise to the low and mid-30s across the province starting today. Turning to the Commonwealth Summit in Kigali, Rwanda. This is where Prince Charles opened the summit by commenting on reconciliation efforts in Canada. He said Canadians are approaching reconciliation with Indigenous peoples with courage and unwavering commitment. The prince told the heads of government that they can learn from Canada's efforts to lay a foundation of respect and understanding upon which a better future can be built. Once the Commonwealth Summit wraps up in Rwanda, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will head to Germany for a G7 summit. Then he will fly to Madrid for a NATO summit. Well, back here at home, Canada's former top soldier is calling for more support for Ukraine. And he's warning that even more economic hardship is in store if Russia isn't stopped. Retired General Rick Hillier is working with the Ukrainian World Congress and retired military commanders from several other countries to rally support for Ukraine. He's concerned that Canadians are losing interest in the war as attention turns increasingly toward rising inflation and other issues closer to home. Taking a look at Canada's job market now, and it appears that there were more than 1 million job vacancies at the beginning of April. Now that's up more than 23,000 from March and more than 40% higher than last April. Statistics Canada reports the number of job vacancies hit a record high in several sectors. This includes construction, transportation and warehousing, finance and insurance, and arts, entertainment, and recreation. And on the East Coast, the 6 chiefs of New Brunswick's Wolastoqey Nation are calling on the Premier to address racism in his commission. They want Blaine Higgs to scuttle his commission on systemic racism. The chiefs say he will be wasting time and money if he allows it to continue. This comes after an interim report was shelved and a policy advisor quit due to concerns about the commission's independence. The chiefs are calling for an Indigenous-led public inquiry into systemic racism, as was recommended by the commissioner in the shelved report. Turning to Ontario now, where Sylvia Jones has been named as the new Deputy Premier and Health Minister. This is one of the key changes in Doug Ford's new 30-person cabinet. The cabinet, announced Friday morning, has many ministers in the same portfolios they held during Ford's last government. Still, there are some new faces in cabinet. This includes Ford's nephew, Michael Ford, who is named Minister of Citizenship and Multiculturalism. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency has issued a recall for Crave Stevia brand all-natural dark chocolate because it may contain milk, which is not declared on the label. The affected product was sold in 85-gram packages with a best before date of September 2023. The recalled chocolate was sold in British Columbia and Ontario and may have been distributed nationally. It was also sold online. After the break, we take a look at energy prices across Canada, so stay with us. We'll be speaking with Dan McTeague from GasWizard.ca up next. Up now, a look at fuel prices across Canada. Forum Daily's Energy Update with GasWizard.ca's Dan McTeague up now. All yours, Dan.
Well, thank you very much for that, Nima. And again, another crazy week on energy markets, really all over the map. But, I got to say, panic about a recession and inflation is going to drive prices at the pumps for the foreseeable future. Much as there is a disconnect between supply and demand, and as demand is much stronger, supply is simply not there. Proposals by governments, especially not Canadian, because the Canadian government enjoys the fact that we have high taxes and wants them to go even higher. In the United States, the Biden administration is in complete panic mode, and it's one of the reasons why they're planning to dump the 18 cent a gallon federal tax. By the way, that hasn't been changed in 35 years. That works out to about 4.5 cents a liter. The irony is that what is driving these hot prices higher in the first place has to do with demand being extraordinarily strong. And if you drop prices, it's not going to change the fundamentals. That is to say, demand will still remain strong, perhaps get stronger. Refineries in the United States are running at 94, 95% capacity. What that means is that somehow, some way, any disruption, any small disruption by one or two or three refineries, which often happens in warmer temperatures, when we see hurricanes in the U.S. Gulf Coast. I see one starting to develop now that the season is in full swing. Any one of these things could cause prices to go even higher. So the solution of the short-term fix, whether it was Biden administration's decision to release oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, now down about half, alarmingly, leaving the United States very vulnerable to any other type of shock. We now see, of course, attempts to try to change the formulation of gasoline so that they can use winter blends of gasoline. That's not going to be well received by the environment. And I think a lot of environmentalists and I think a lot of gas stations and consumers are going to realize that putting butane, which is the mixture we use in winter when it's colder, versus alkylates may lead to that old phenomenon some of us are familiar with, run-on your vehicles as the engine is not able to respond to calm itself down, as it were. But this will create obviously volatile compound emissions. There's a whole pile of things that it will do. What it really suggests, though, on a global scale, is that we're now realizing that the move towards constraining oil and gas, shutting it down, locking it down, Great Reset, net zero, just transition, all of these wonderful actions have had the alternative or the unintended effect of actually raising emissions. Talk to the Europeans about that, who are now having to burn coal because there's no more natural gas, and they've been relying on the renewables to make up the difference. And of course, renewables are not ready for prime time. What that means in Canada, though, is that we have seen in the past week about a 10-cent decrease in the price of gas in many cities: Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. I think that's going to end. And this week, we could actually start to see a bit of a U-turn as prices start to go up. The Canadian dollar isn't as strong, it continues to show weakness at 1.30 to buy $1. What that really means is that we may be seeing a reversal of fortunes for the brief respite that we've seen, where prices are not going up, but in fact falling a little bit here in Canada. The outlook for this next week, therefore, is a bit of a split decision. We're going to continue to see somewhat lower prices, but I think by week's end, as we head towards the July long weekend and the holiday weekend, both in Canada and the United States, expect prices to start to move right back up. The world continues to need more oil, and it just doesn't have enough to go around. But in particular, this is a crunch on the supply side for refineries. Really, that's it for the week. We'll see if the federal government makes good on its plan to introduce the second carbon tax, the Clean Fuel Standard. We'll have more to talk about that in the month of July. For now, Nima, thanks for having me, and we'll talk next week.
All right, thanks for that, Dan. Again, that was Dan McTeague of GasWizard.ca. He's also the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. All right, well, meanwhile, the vice president of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture also spoke on the impact of rising gas prices. He says rural Canadians are being hit the hardest by any spike in inflation, as well as the cost of gas and diesel. Keith Curry notes that people outside of major cities rarely have access to public transit. This means they pay disproportionately more for fuel because they have to drive everywhere. Moving to Quebec now, where residents are celebrating the provincial Saint Jean Baptiste Day in person today. This is for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic forced organizers to cancel most festivities over the past 2 years. Celebrations for the 188th edition kicked off with major concerts in Quebec City and Montreal on Thursday evening. This is where thousands of attendees sported the province's official blue and white colors. About 5,000 activities across 650 locales in Quebec are planned for the long weekend. Forum Daily will be right back after the break with a look at stories from around the world. But first, our cryptocurrency and digital asset segment with Catherine Murray. Stay tuned. All right, up now, a look at cryptocurrencies and digital assets with Catherine Murray. Catherine is the host of The Buck Stops Here, and she joins us now. All yours, Catherine.
Thanks, Nima. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your crypto and digital asset update. I'm Catherine Murray. Well, the top 10 cryptocurrencies have found some stabilization over the past 2 days or so, but trading volume on Bitfinex does remain below the 30-day moving average. Bitcoin right now lingering around that $20,000 mark. And of course, as you know, the markets are 24/7. So keep your eyes on it. But for right now, we seem to be finding a little bit of stabilization. Now, of course, last week's market driving event was crypto lending platform Celsius freezing clients' assets amid significant market volatility. The fate of approximately 500,000 users and about $8 billion of assets under management, or deposits, I should say, is still actually unknown. Crypto users really wondering if the company will be able to restructure or declare bankruptcy. Celsius is apparently cooperating, though, with various state security officials. Now, of course, you know, the regulatory environment from a federal national perspective is still yet to really develop. So stay tuned for perhaps more news on that front. And again, what the fate will be of the company and what kind of implications that might have for other firms and or investors as they think about, you know, where they place their next dollar or crypto or Bitcoin. Away from that, and on the back of it, perhaps, ECB President Christine Lagarde did comment that crypto staking and lending must be regulated. And of course, all eyes on Fed Chair Jerome Powell as it relates to his next interest rate hike, the Fed tightening cycle, whether they'll be able to combat inflation. Will they cause a recession, or will they be able to orchestrate a soft landing? Well, this week he was testifying before Congress, and he did say that he doesn't see crypto having any macroeconomic implications, and added that better regulatory frameworks for the space is needed. So really no change there, but always important to keep our eyes on what's going on from a regulatory perspective. Also importantly here in China, the state-run newspaper, China Economic Daily, warned investors to be prepared for the risks associated with Bitcoin heading to zero. And the Monetary Authority of Singapore plans to be brutal and unrelenting on any crypto firm violating security laws. Meanwhile, though, we do continue to see increased involvement in the space, in the crypto and digital asset space, with eBay acquiring Known Origin, which is an Ethereum-based NFT marketplace. Interestingly, eBay actually got into the NFT space back in May of 2021 in terms of buying and selling NFTs. In headline news, FTX is buying stock clearing Embed to expand their equity trading platform. Kind of interesting to see a little bit of the crossover between traditional markets, traditional trading markets, and crypto trading in terms of the firms wanting essentially to be able to offer both. We've also, of course, seen many calling for a crypto winter. Despite that, you are seeing, again, more companies move into the space. Coinbase has launched its first derivatives product focused on retail traders. And lastly, we've also heard, and I've heard this from a number of people looking at Bitcoin, that perhaps the best way to invest in it is by doing dollar cost averaging, which is something we obviously know has been a strategy within the equity markets for decades. And this, as it relates to crypto dollar cost averaging, is according to Wolf of All Streets podcast. Nima, I'll leave it there. Back to you.
Thanks for that, Catherine. Again, that was Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here. For more analysis and news on the markets, be sure to follow her there. All right, well, meanwhile, federal health officials have decided to pull Juul. On Thursday, the Food and Drug Administration ordered the e-cigarette company to snuff out its products from shelves. It's part of an effort to take a close look at the multi-billion-dollar vaping industry. Officials are still trying to see if e-cigs live up to their claim that adult smokers can use them to quit tobacco, while young users won't end up hooked. While the government order bars the sale of Juul products, consumers aren't restricted from having or using them. Now imagine Alexa speaking to you using the voice of a family member, even if that person is dead. Amazon says it has technology that could let its virtual assistant be programmed to mimic the voice of a specific person. This is based on less than a minute-long vocal sample. The technology rolled out at a tech conference in Las Vegas, and Amazon says it is a way for people to relate better to Alexa. While the idea is intriguing, it's also expected to raise privacy, copyright, and ethical concerns. More news from around the world coming up next on Forum Daily. Protesters are chanting and waving signs in front of the barricades surrounding the U.S. Supreme Court. This comes after the justices overturned Roe v. Wade. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the Republican-controlled Supreme Court has ripped away a woman's right to make her own reproductive health decisions. Missouri's Attorney General is already moving to enforce a state law banning abortion. Eric Schmidt says the ban will only make exceptions in cases of medical emergency. Meanwhile, a bipartisan gun violence bill was passed in the U.S. Senate and is on the verge of winning final congressional approval. Many thought it would be an impossible task, citing the extreme polarity in modern American politics. The $13 million package would toughen background checks for the youngest gun buyers and keep firearms from more domestic violence offenders. And it will help states put in place red flag laws, making it easier for authorities to take weapons from people considered dangerous. 15 Republicans joined all 50 Democrats, including their two independent allies, in approving the bill. All right, turning to an emergency committee of the World Health Organization. This is where the WHO is in the midst of deciding if it will declare the spiraling outbreak of monkeypox to be a global emergency. That would mean the UN Health Agency believes there's a risk of the disease spreading across even more borders, which could possibly require a global response. A Nigerian virologist has criticized the WHO. He says if it was really worried about monkeypox spread, it would have convened the committee in 2017. This was when the disease reemerged in his country, instead of what he described of waiting until it showed up in white countries. In Afghanistan, the death toll from a devastating earthquake continues to climb. This comes days after it turned brick and stone homes into rubble. State media reports the quake has killed 1,150 and injured at least 3,000. The UN puts the number of dead at around 770 people. Still, both reports make this the deadliest quake to hit Afghanistan in 2 decades. Moving to Europe now, where back-to-back world leader summits this weekend will focus on uniting Western nations behind Ukraine in its fight against Russia's invasion. And it will discuss overcoming Turkey's opposition to NATO membership for Finland and Sweden. The group of 7 leading economic powers are meeting in Germany for their annual gathering Sunday through Tuesday. Afterward, NATO member countries will meet Wednesday and Thursday in Madrid. Other topics for the leaders include climate change, the global economy and inflation, energy, food security, and countering China's rise. Meanwhile, a regional governor in eastern Ukraine says the country's troops will retreat from a besieged city to avoid encirclement. The city of Severodonetsk is the administrative center of the Luhansk region, and it has faced relentless Russian bombardment. Ukrainian troops fought the Russians in house-to-house battles before retreating to a huge chemical factory on the city's edge. This is where they holed up in its sprawling underground structures. In the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson's leadership of the Conservative Party has suffered a heavy double blow. This comes as voters rejected the Tories in 2 by-elections. In one riding, the Liberal Democrats overturned a 24,000 Conservative majority to win. This while the main opposition Labour Party reclaimed another riding in Northern England. The voters' rebuke comes just weeks after 41% of Mr. Johnson's own MPs voted to oust him as party leader. The UN Secretary General says the war in Ukraine is adding to disruptions caused by climate change, the COVID-19 pandemic, and inequality. And he says this can produce an unprecedented global hunger crisis. Antonio Guterres says the world faces catastrophe. This is because of the growing shortage of food amid the global hunger crisis, which is already affecting millions of people. Mr. Guterres says there is a real risk that multiple famines will be declared this year, and the situation could be even worse next year. A new survey has suggested that summer Fridays might be the key to a happier workplace. The survey was commissioned by Wisetail and conducted by OnePoll. It found that out of the 2,000 working adults who responded, 59% said they have a job which offers summer Fridays. This means allowing employees a half day or full day off on the occasional Friday during the summer months. Over 8 in 10 employees said they greatly benefited from this perk. They say it makes them feel much happier while at their jobs. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Remember, for more news on demand, you can visit our website or follow us on social media. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time on Forum Daily.